Last week, we continued our talk with Lee as a major bombshell was dropped about that last service that was attended where me and so many other folks went to have our questions answered. We found out in the last episode that there were security guards with our faces on cue cards ready to attack if anything was said, and there was a special hit put out for Lindsay. We continue this week with more information and we wrap everything up.
Yeah. I wouldn't be worried about Lindsay. I'd be worried about her friend. I can say,
Yeah,
I'd be worried about her friend. Yeah, who's Donna.
She needed three security guard because she could take
like,
out.
And I give Donna a shout out, Donna, if you're listening. Donna is kind of like the friend of friend. Like, homegirl will go to war for you. So if anybody, they need to be worried about anybody, they should have been worried about Donna taking somebody down versus Lindsay.
Crazy. But then the thing too, you talk about Gaskin coming up and or Gaskin coming up and talking to Lindsay too. So Lindsay approached an elder, Claude, because he was a friend of ours, to try to be like, hey, like, this is not right. Like people need, because everybody that was,
she was like, we were told that we were going to be able to be able to.
They're going to work at the service. Yeah. Like, people wanted to know. They wanted a chance to speak. This is Paige and Jody. Like, everybody. There were so many things that had happened.
Nobody had been
with a mountain of things to be addressed. Yeah. And when they opted out of addressing it, he slipped out the back like he was.
Because people, the main ones were, there had been all these accusations, but I think the main ones that people wanted to hear addressed were you and Lindsay had been gone at this point, and Paige and Jody, who were the youth pastors and worship leader, one of the worship leaders, had also been gone at this point. Those were the two at that point in time. Those were the two that had been the most freshest and recent, without any kind of word, without any kind of explanation. Actually had been lies that had been put out there that it was due to their marriages, your marriages, falling apart, and you needing to reconcile, all this kind of stuff. And so people were showing up to hear about what happened to Lee and Lindsay, what happened to Paige and Jody, why did it happen?
Yeah.
And
it's like the restructuring the elder board. I mean, there was all,
and the elder board had been restructured, all this other stuff had been happening. People genuinely wanted to know. Yeah. People weren't coming there to attack. People just wanted to know what's going on.
Please explain.
Yeah.
If you're going to have us still continue to be tithing members of this church and contributing, like, we'd kind of like to be in the loop.
Which people had also forgotten. Well, I think they had forgotten. People had not forgotten. The Sunday before that, Wendy had gotten on stage, had addressed the fact that you and Lindsay were not there, and had also addressed the fact that Paige and Jody were not there. She specifically said something about Paige and Jody and how that was going to be addressed. And then she also talked about you. And she said, we are going to call a family meeting.
The purpose of the meeting.
Yeah, we're going to call a family meeting this next Sunday at 4:00.
It was the reason for the meeting.
Yes, we've heard your concerns. We want to address them. We want to give you a time to, ask questions and have those answered about why they have these changes have been made and why these staff members have left. I remember her specifically saying, we know they were important to you. We also love them. We want to, we're going to restrict it to just members of how the people who are directly involved, or members who
they try to limit it.
They try to limit it to just members, not the public outside. And so she had literally stepped on stage, had said your guys' names, and said specifically, we are going to address this issue. And so people showed up because they had just been told this was going to be addressed, and it wasn't addressed.
Yeah, it was not addressed. I mean, that I wasn't even mentioned, but that's what I'd heard. It wasn't mentioned at all. They just slipped out.
No, he just brought up all the other people, the new staff members that had taken y'all's place, introduced them, and told everybody how he had gotten a prophetic word for so-and-so to be there. And that was it.
Yeah.
Had their pictures on a PowerPoint, said where they came from, said what they're going to be doing. And then it was like, and thank you guys, good night.
And then the show went on.
And people, and then
still went on for years.
But people were it's so funny because after that, I think he really showed his hand in that moment to the congregation as a whole. Because I remember it being chaos afterwards. Yeah. It wasn't just Lindsay and Donna who were upset. It wasn't just Jody who was there who was upset. It wasn't just the youth who was there supporting him who were also upset. Right. It was, I remember several people that were there in the chairs, like, loudly started talking and asking questions and were approaching the other staff members who, poor them, Chad had just left in a hurry and left them to answer the questions.
His getaway car.
So now they're the ones being like,
that's so
they're the ones being, having this heap of people asking them all these questions that they don't have the answers to. They don't know y'all's story. It was chaos. And I think I think that's when he really showed his hand. He would have been much better off answering the questions and addressing it head on.
Just accept, like, these are I make a decision. I'm the CEO,
and I made my decision.
I made the call.
But when he didn't do that, I think that was, to me, that was the very long beginning of the end.
Yeah, I feel like that was the case, and lots of people then had to like endured as much as they could to that point,
because that's when the mass exodus
began. You know what?
Yeah,
we've been down with a lot, but like we got to call it. Like, this is out of control.
So after that, this mass exodus began. We kind of said the first wave, the first real big wave. There'd been people who had left before, and there'd been, little pockets here and there, but I would say that was kind of the first real big event. Was after you guys, and was after that meeting, that whole series of events kind of started this initial real mass exodus of people who then started showing up at different churches in Greenville. So you had a lot of people from Bridgeway that went to Outreach Church. A lot of people went to Hope Church. A lot of people went to Faith Renewed. Several went to Faith Renewed Church. Several went to like 5 Point, these different churches in the area. So you started inheriting these people who, some of them had known Bridgeway. Roy, of course, had his own story with Bridgeway and with Chad. Terry Rogers had been aware of Bridgeway. Obviously, Rich Butler had his own story with Chad. So they're inheriting these people. They know from firsthand experience what this is like. And all of a sudden, what was meant to be kept in-house now is out of house. And you can't say the name Bridgeway in the upstate at that point without controversy.
I mean, literally, their name couldn't be used anymore. They had to rebrand it.
There was nothing good about it.
And they're 2 rebrands deep. I mean, it's out of control. So I would say, can I say a positive thing though about that? Because this goes back to the prophetic, and one of the words that was pretty regularly received was that Bridgeway is supposed to be like a sending house, a depot. There were all these different examples of that would describe the same thing, where people were supposed to be drawn to and connect at, like we connected at Bridgeway, and then leave Bridgeway and go out into the community, out into the world, and have a larger impact. And so the crazy thing is, like, really what he tried to do, it short-circuited on itself, because those people were never meant to be basically hoarded, which is what he did. He would find these people that would come and get drawn. He would, like yourself, and he would be like, he'd start trying to get you to stay there so he could capitalize on your gifts.
Right.
And really what was supposed to happen is actually what has happened, which is kind of exciting and kind of cool to see God still getting what he wanted accomplished done, just without the help and in, like a direct contrast to what someone else was trying to do. So
because so many of my pivotal moments in relationships with people is because of my time at Bridgeway. Angie and Tom Riddle, who I've talked about, I'm very close with them still. We're very still parental figures to me. Like, I became very close with them. The Mercados, who I was very close with, like, met them there. Obviously, you and Lindsay. Lindsay was actually, fun story. Lindsay was actually the first person to reach out to me after everything I had, because we had mentioned the whole Solomon James page had come up, and there'd been a public letter that had been put out there, and people were commenting on that, and it was the collective of families that came together, was releasing all this stuff. It was a very open letter that had been sent to the elders and never
nobody's
given a chance from the elders.
But not to read it.
I remember, there's all these people sharing their stories and their comments of that letter, and I was one of them. And Lindsay personally messaged me and was like, I would really love to hear more of your story. I'm really sorry to hear about what you know that you've always basically got a place at our table. If I would love to connect with you. And I messaged her back and said, I would love to do that, which is, I'm so glad I messaged that because I knew, just from what I knew of you guys and knowing you had your own exit and that there was probably a story there, I knew that I would feel safe enough to share mine, because I knew probably whatever I had gone through, y'all had gone through 50 times more, which is 100% true. But I knew that it would be a good table to come to. And so, I did. And obviously, that's where we connected. So, I mean, it's like you said, so there's a verse in the Bible that I've always connected with and that I do use, and it says, what you meant for evil, the Lord has used for my good. Telling Joseph, the story of Joseph and him telling his brothers that. And I've always thought about that because I think, whatever the enemy meant for evil and used Chad and all them to do, it still was used for my good.
Yeah.
I still would not have had the relationships that I have. We wouldn't be sitting here talking
totally
if it wasn't for
that
lane.
And it just doesn't have to be like that.
No.
That's the thing. So please, if you're listening to this and you are like, pastoring a church or whatever, like, please don't let it turn to a celebrity cult. Like, watch out for these signs and symptoms. There's ways to combat it.
And it's just crazy because I had this conversation with Ashley the other day and I said, I was talking about the very simple things that I would want. And I think, to have a spiritual community, a house of worship that we would go to and plug into, those type of things. And I was telling her, and I was just kind of like, and it was just a couple things on this list. And I was like, I don't feel like I'm asking for too much. Like, am I asking for too much? I'm asking for genuine community. I would like a genuine, authentic community of people. No one finds themselves or tries to be higher than the next person. Yeah. The pastor doesn't consider himself to be some rock star or super god. Everyone's serving together. It's a place, like for my personally, it's a place where the Spirit is moving, where you have expressions of the gifts of the Spirit, all those kind of stuff. Like, and genuine worship. Like, am I asking for too much?
It's not too much.
And you think no, right?
Yeah.
But it feels impossible to find these days. Yeah, like, it's really hard.
Really hard to find. I think, part of that, we did talk about this earlier before the podcast. But the idea that, the children of Israel, we talked about that, where, they had the opportunity to speak directly to God and to be led by God, and they refused and wanted to have an individual be the one that was a proxy, or to have a king that would rule over them so they could be like other nations. And so the thing that I would say too is that, on a congregants on our end, it is actually our responsibility, and we do have to take that kind of ownership and know that we do have the authority because we're the ones that are paying these people's checks, essentially. Like, we're paying for their salaries and tithing and all that, so we, with our butts, are basically voting and opting in. So, just remember that kind of the power that you do have as a congregant.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. And then don't self-perpetuate these things, because I think that's what tends to happen is, we'll say we don't want the narcissist to abuse us and to take advantage of us, but then, we're kind of also now asking for a position that would be predisposed to drawing a narcissistic type personality into the mix, and then expecting that to not happen. So, my thing is like, and this is part of the work that I try to do with churches too. It's like, all right, just understand that, when you have somebody on stage, right, everybody's kind of looking to them. You have to be intentional about not allowing that person to become the main part of the show, the main thing, the celebrity. And there's churches that are doing it with really creative, by really creative means that, we could talk about in another podcast and doing it right. But like, there's ways to do it anyway. So, but I think that's part of it. I would just say is on us, right? That's been my revelation, as well as like, all right, like I have responsibility. And so never again would be what I would say, am I going to sit through and, be, responsible for the damage that I did personally, that I've had to apologize to people for, or just be taken advantage of,
So in taking, so when in leaving and taking responsibility on your own, and I do remember you going on an apology tour and inviting people over to your house or having dinners and those type of things, talking things out and that kind of thing. So, what was that revelation of taking your own personal responsibility for things that you were culpable in and your part in it, and then also configuring, having the dichotomy of what you're responsible for versus what, I guess a better way to say it is, how do you take responsibility without taking on unnecessary guilt?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I would say part of it is just kind of the introspective type of a, look in, like, okay, what were the things that I did or said that really were on me? And then what were the things that I was naive in or, thinking the best in, so that I can basically shore up those places, to not get callous and defensive and shut down, but to be able to stay tender and kind of open. That was a kind of an important thing in my kind of like post Bridgeway process. But yeah, I think the thing of just owning up to any of those situations that I was in, where I mean, when you're hurting somebody when it's happening. In the moment, I would have just felt justified, and I would have felt like I wasn't harming this person. This person's harming this person because of that gaslight kind of a environment that we're in,
keeping them from this.
Yeah, it's like, I'm helping this person. Yeah, I'm saving this person from the addiction that I'm being told they have. It's like the lies basically. So, but I would think the other side of it too is like if you are in a leadership position, you have to open it up to, okay, well, I could say I can recognize some of these moments, and so I will have contacted the individuals to have had those meetings and to be able to apologize to them to their face, but really, and to give them a chance to kind of like, if they have other issues to talk about it. But like, really, if you're in a leadership position, you have to open yourself up, in my opinion, to those people who you didn't know you hurt. And so that was something too, is that we made ourselves available. If there's anybody that was out there that like, felt like I had wronged them, I would like to hear from them. So just opening yourself up to both of those were people that you knew that you had, harmed, and then people that you may not know, but being open to and willing to have those conversations, even if you didn't realize you did anything wrong, because those are lessons for me to have learned as well, so that I cannot repeat that ever again. It's not just about, of course, like cleaning, when I clean my slate and, not take those things to the grave with me, obviously, but really it's about me becoming a better version of myself, because I don't ever want to do those things again. So
what have you had to unlearn? How has your perspective on the church changed? How's your perspective on God changed? Or like, what did you have to unlearn afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say the priesthood of believers is like been a big thing. So just realizing that, things have kind of flattened out post Christ. There's only one head of the church. There are people that have different gifts and skill sets that will do certain things, which, has become this massive analogy for me where it's hard for me to have a conversation and not bring up the analogy of the body of Christ and talk about, how Paul is addressing the different body parts within the body of Christ, and that, the ones that are hidden or that are, least valued actually are the ones that are most protected, right, and most cherished. So not to get too gross, but like the butthole is a important part of the function of the body, right? And without it, you would literally die. A human would die. And it's the most protected part. Nobody would want to be the butthole of the body of Christ. Yeah. Just going to say it, right? Yeah. But at the same time, like that's said, but at the same time, that is, one of the most important parts of the body, and the scripture is talking about giving it special honor and protection, right? So it's like, that's the perspective to have. And so then I've taken that analogy a step further, because I believe that, any analogy that's being used, parable in the Bible, it's being used by or inspired by the God of the universe who created all things. And so therefore, no matter how fine you look at that, like how detailed you look at it, it shouldn't fall apart. And so then we could think of ourselves as cells within the body parts of the body of Christ drawn together. And so that's my perspective now, is like, all right, I'm more curious to know, what cell or body part are you a part of, and how can I help contribute to and connect with this person that I'm, sitting here talking to in a way that's going to glorify God. And so that is not connecting none of that has anything to do with a local house of worship.
Yeah.
I think those places are important, but my perspective on those have changed as well. So like a, small C church versus the big C church, which I think is what I'm talking about, the body of Christ. The small C is an important part of the body, but it's not the most important part. And that's what I think has to shift culturally. I think that the little C is best to be thought of as a place for people to come to connect, and to share testimony and to learn, right, from people's experiences. But it's not really the place to come to get entertained, which I think is a thing that would have to shift. And then the evidence of that would be meaningful change in people's lives. But I have a whole dissertation that I wrote up.
So what do you suppose? So all this stuff happened. You obviously, like I said, we had the first wave. Bridgeway can no longer be even mentioned without hurt and abuse tied to that name, because all of these other churches have inherited these hurt members of this house and have heard these stories, which are horrendous. So they rebrand, all because, once again, Chad says he got a word from the Lord that it's meant to be a garden, still bad fruit, but meant to be a garden.
Did die,
so they call it the garden. But because Chad is Chad and Wendy is Wendy and the leadership is the leadership, and, put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig, type of thing. The same stuff happens all over again. Same story, just different faces on staff this time, a couple different elders, that type of thing, different congregants. Same stuff all over. So then you have this second wave of people later on who leave, a couple of them from leadership, who then create their own YouTube channel and podcast and start telling the Armando and them start telling these stories. And they tell these stories. And so then now, because of this,
like that was
right. And I think I think this is also because it was the first time, because, during, I think, of y'all's cycle of leaving, everything was so fresh. You had the factors of the NDAs. You had the factors of you having to heal and go through your own process, and people having to rebuild, their families and stuff because of the destruction. But now this time it's a little bit different because it's not the first time this is being talked about. And now it's coming from, again, like not just Congress, but it's coming from the actual mouth, the horse's mouth of the people who, were on a very public platform. You can't ignore that. You can't act like it's not there. I mean, it's being shared, hundreds of times among people.
Going viral.
So it's going viral. So you have to address it. And then on top of that of course then gives voice to the people from the first movement who've been talking this whole time, but now it just kind of gives real fresh wind to their voices. So now you have this second wave happen in this big thing. Finally, now Chad is directly addressed, and him and Wendy are famously let go. And of course, he does the thing that he always does, which he tries to spiritually spin it. And he gets up on stage and he's like, I want to bless this family and I want to pray over them and all this kind of.
I did not watch that.
I did, and it was gross. It was very gross. So to kind of, on a quick caption, they announce it. The elders announce it. I think it was still gross in the way it was done, of we believe, that the Lord is still going to use them, blah, 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 blah. Like just basically like throwing a bunch of baby powder on a fresh pile of crap, but not cleaning the crap. And so then they get up there and it's Chad and it's Wendy and it's their kids and they're all holding hands. And Chad's like, well, I just really want to bless this body and I want to bless this group of believers and I'm going to pray over them and I'm going to give I'm going to give you a fatherly blessing. What he said. Nobody wants you. Nobody looks at you as a father. And if you're the abusive father, then nobody wants around.
You touch them.
And so does that. And so then Chad leaves. And now what's very clearly on his Instagram, he turned all the comments and everything off of, because God knows he didn't want to hear that feedback. Does a public, quote unquote, apology, about 10-minute apology video, where he admits to all this kind of stuff and apologizes and says that he never realized that he was prophetically manipulating people. BS.
It's not true.
He particularly addresses this one allegation, which was the biggest allegation.
That was the biggest one, but it was like one of
many.
Several thousand.
One of several thousand, one of many. But this particular allegation that he addressed publicly and was told about publicly is the fact that there was another pastor that was going to had been talking about merging with him and his church and Bridgeway. This was back in the day. They did not merge with Bridgeway. Their daughter gets in a car accident that is nearly fatal. Yeah. Thank God she made it full recovery and is doing amazing.
Yeah.
This pastor's still pastoring a church. Chad, behind closed doors, to many of people on staff, and had been told many people, that the reason why this pastor's daughter got in this car crash and almost died was God's judgment against this pastor for not merging their churches.
Yeah.
Which is obviously jaw on the ground insanity.
Was party to that as well. And
you heard him say that
personally. That's part of my apology tour. That's the church that we ended up attending and kind of going through our healing process with. That couple's, they're incredible, most Christ-like people we know. So that to me was just, like that's one of those moments where in hindsight, I probably should have hit somebody in the mouth for saying something like that, and I didn't.
Because it's like the audacity, right?
Yeah,
like the
who could say
audacity.
that? And yeah,
And so he gets,
to me, it's like, okay, well then who can hear that?
who can hear that?
You
And then,
know?
but also, if he's that bold to say that about
Yeah.
them, what else was he saying?
Oh yeah,
It's like you said, that was one of many examples.
These are just
so. I mean, he particularly, because this is so those who had been on staff, those who had been close to staff, those who had been close to this couple, had known the story.
Yeah,
not everybody knew this story, but those who were in the know were in the know and knew he had said this. But it had been brought to the public's attention, which obviously there was mass outrage over, right? Because that's just,
how could you do that?
It's demonic. I mean, again, it's not to like, that's not not just so that we're right. It really is demonic. Well, he gets on this apology video. He addresses that allegation in particularly and says that, you know, he went and apologized and blah, 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 blah. From my perspective, watching that video, knowing him, seeing all of his manipulative tactics through the years and hearing how he had treated everybody else's story and stuff, it 100% came off as not, I'm sorry. It's an, I'm sorry I got caught. And now I have no other choice to address it. But there was really no real accountability in the video. It was a
irony too. It's this, like, you're only confessing and apologizing for the literal only thing that was like the biggest. Like, you can't just
the actual accusation that was brought against you. Not all
there's many other things maybe you could apologize for, people you could apologize to, but you know, that to me was,
which was so funny because
wild.
And I already know the answer to this, but just for these people listening. So Chad said that he had on this video, he said that he had a list of people that he had personally wronged and had fired and had let go, that he was going to go on an apology tour and make things right with. Have you gotten that call?
I have not got a call from him nor any previous elder.
Surprise. Surprise.
Right,
because you think your name would be on the top of the
list. I feel like I would probably.
I think how could you not make the list? You should be on the list. You and Lindsay both should be on the list.
Yeah, I think we should both be on the list.
100% should be on the list. Yeah, and not only have you not got that call, but I know other former staff members who have also personally told me they have not gotten that. Nobody's gotten the call. What call?
The one couple got that call, and
that tour was a one-stop shop.
And that was like a PR press. It was trying to be like a PR thing.
Yeah, it was a one-stop shop. Well. The list of all these names had the one name, and it was the only names he addressed on that video. So it's like, give me a bunch of crap. Yeah. So then the elders come together, and since then there has been a letter that's been released since then that has said, we laid out a plan for Chad and Wendy. They have been non-compliant to that plan. They have not done anything to reconcile with anybody or this house. Therefore, we have cut them from all fellowship. They will not be welcome back to this house. There is no future path for them, which is the exact same stuff that he had said about everybody else. All right. So now again, he's a victim of what he's like, it's perpetuated. And it's like, sign the elder board. And then what's so wild to me is now the person who's taken over for him really is not too terrible. Has been known for their own stuff that have yet to take it over. I can't tell what their current state is or what they're doing. Anyways, what I do know is the elders who still perpetuated that mess are still perpetuating the mess. They're still in this. It's still the same.
And that would be the thing. Like if the elders are over,
they all should have resigned, and they should have let him go, and they all should have got up there and said, "We apologize."
You're not in a position to get preachy with anybody,
right?
So
again, it's just a scapegoat, and so now it's been rebranded a third time.
Yeah. Well, so the new church, I have spoken to the pastor of, and it does sound like they have, at least could be wrong, but this is what I remember from the conversation. They've got two levels of oversight. Like they're basically overkilling it with this Catch the Fire network, and having multiple layers of accountability because they're trying to prevent this thing from happening again. And it's a separate company now, a separate organization. So it's not just a rebrand from what I'd heard. So again, I could be wrong. But what I recall is that it's not just a rebrand. It's a new church that just is in the same building.
Time will tell.
So
I think
we'll
time,
see.
Time will tell.
I was like, hey, I think honestly, like that property should just get turned into like a subdivision because at this point, I don't know, you don't have
land.
prayer walks you got to do around that property. There's a number of amount of oil and wine you got to pour to purify it, but like you got to get some intercessors out there.
Which I can also say
that ground out.
Yeah. So just the side tidbit that's very interesting, that I can say because this has been confirmed and publicly talked about. So again, I'm not whistleblowing anything brand new here. There is a very big pastor named Ron Carpenter here in Greenville, South Carolina. Redemption World Outreach Center, 2 locations here in Greenville, 1 in California. For those of you from our world or in this area, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Big deal. Guy who was in talks of purchasing the property over at Bridgeway because they had left Greenville, went to California, came back to Greenville, was looking for space because they were renting out the TD Center, was looking for more permanent space. Bridgeway had come up on the radar. There had been talks. Again, there had been the spiritual manipulation there of God told me from chatting them. Go into talks with this to pull out because Chad had said, but had not alerted anybody else. The elder board was not down for it. So Ron shows up, from my understanding, to talk about this property and to talk about this potential deal, only to be told, we have no intention of giving this away. We have no intention of selling it. We don't know why you're here.
Yeah.
And he's basically,
that's embarrassing.
Is like in a total Chad move. It's been told one thing and now all of a sudden it's pivoted and it's flipped on him. And so now Ron is being made to look the bad guy, like he's trying to come in and take everything over, which is not true.
Wild. It sounds so on par.
And then a lot of financial stuff as well then came out. It was kind of like, and basically good for him. I'll give him that. He basically was like, he walked out that meeting and said, I'm touching this place. I don't want nothing to do with any of this mess because it's.
I mean, I pray that it can get redeemed, but it's just it's just how many churches have?
How many times does it have to happen? Yeah,
it's like how many churches have to die on that property?
Yeah,
for you to be like, hey, maybe.
Which I hope, because if so, again, for those of you who don't know, Catch the Fire is a series of churches network that come from a church in Toronto, Canada.
Toronto Blessing,
which is the Arnett's, which started from the Toronto Blessing, which. Look it up. It's kind of around the same time and era of the Brownsville revival.
Brownsville vibe, yeah.
But happened in an airport church, literally in Canada. Took off. Still going to this day. Still very big, popular church up there in Canada. Who then started a network of churches. I'm not exactly sure how they got in touch with the Arnett's or the.
I mean, I think it's.
I don't know if it's old connections or what.
Yeah.
But integrated themselves into it. So Now, what I can say to that is I do know personal people who are close with the Arnett's and who have known them for a very long time, who have said nothing but amazing, incredible, reputable things about them and how they handle ministry and how they handle churches and the health of their church. My hope would be that with that kind of reputable oversight, that there would be legitimate accountability, legitimate calling out of things, legitimate stuff that happens there to potentially make it something healthy. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's people's lives.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see people destroyed. You know, it's like, even with Chad and Wendy, as cautionary of a tale as it is, it's still sad.
Yeah.
Because I don't just think, I think about Chad and his life, how it's, you know, what he's brought on his own life and legacy.
They have kids.
Wendy, what she's brought on her own legacy.
Yeah.
And I think about their children.
Yes.
You grow up in that household with knowing the controversy that's attached to both of your parents. That's your parents. Of course you love your mom. Of course you love your dad. They're great kids, you know. It's sad because you think about the kids and you think about how that shapes their life and the view of church and God that they have, and of marriage and their parents. And so you don't ever want to see that happen with anybody. You look at the destruction that's come before. And so it's like, the only prayer is you hope it doesn't continue, because there's been enough bloodshed.
Yeah, totally. And I think that is where that story has landed, is there's not really a way for them, after everything that's happened and everything that's come out, to start back up again. And I don't know, I think that even just this conversation is part of the body, holding the body accountable, which I think people don't really talk about enough. I think people like to use, they cherry pick scriptures to try to prevent people from talking about these things. And really what ends up happening is everyone knows it, sees it. We just look like idiots that we can't take care of ourselves.
It's sad because it's dissipated. I mean, we were there at its height. I mean, you would say probably like what, over 1,000
peak.
Over 1,000.
I think we had 1,200.
I was about to say, around 12.
Yeah,
I knew it was over 1,000. Yeah. So, I mean, I remember we were there at the very high peak glory, I guess, kind of glory days of Bridgeway Church.
Yeah.
At its peak, and now it's dwindled almost to nothing. You go, it's like you said, you go from 25 members out there. It's not 25 member staff now.
I mean, I would say that's a consequence of doing something that is in a contradiction to your God-given design. So if, again, going back to your prophetic words, if those words were true, that it was supposed to be a place where people can come from all over, gather, get healed and whole, which, I mean, obviously that didn't happen, but like that was the intent.
That was the intent.
If that was the point, and then get sent out, with those new connections, new relationships, some new fire, about whatever it is that you were called to do, and you're trying to do something other than that, it is going to die out and stall out because God's not really on it or with it, because you're doing something that wasn't by his design. That's kind of why we have to be sensitive to it and be asking him questions and listening to his voice and, living a life according to that. So, a lot of those principles that we were taught are still true. And so, I don't lose that. I think it's just, having a better understanding of how to apply it and know that that's our personal responsibility, not the responsibility of a singular man or, an organization of staff.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If he was to call you, if Chad was to call you today, would you pick up that call?
I mean, for sure not. He'd have to text me. I'm not about to get on a phone call.
Would you respond?
I would respond. Yeah, absolutely. Like at the end of the day, here's the thing. There isn't a human being that I'm not going, that I in my belief is that, if we're going to go to heaven, right, we're going to be together. So like, there's not a human being that I'm not going to be able to like connect with them, because that's the possibility, is that I could spend eternity with that person. And so why would I not, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, why would I say no to an opportunity for true redemption and, like forgiveness to be extended, which I have forgiven them. Right. So on my end, at least, why would I say no to that? So yeah, I would say yes to it. I don't know that that's the case for everybody. I think for some people, depending on the amount of, abuse they experienced, is different than mine. Right. So mine was unique, I think, because of the position that I had, but so I wouldn't say that that's the case and should be the case for everybody. Some people being in the same room with them would be the equivalent of being born again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So like, I just think that, that's something I wouldn't expect anybody to
re-victimization.
For me, exactly. So I would never want that, for Lindsay as an example, I would never want that. But for me personally, I didn't have that level of impact. So of course I would sit with them and talk with them. And
what would you say to him?
We wouldn't be friends. Yeah. And, I would hope I would let him talk, essentially, because that's one of the things is he was great at spinning conversations. So I would just let him talk and, listen to what he had to say and hope that, he was repentant and had learned some lessons and is making changes. And really the thing that's going to determine whether those changes have been made is time. So 5-10 years from now, let's see how things look.
Yeah.
Like fruit is important. You talked about good fruit, bad fruit. Fruit's important, but fruit over time. Yeah. You can have plastic fruit for a minute. You can fake good fruit for a short amount of time, but you can't fake it long term. So let's see some real change. But when it just comes to like forgiveness, then I would have that conversation with him.
Yeah. Do you think you would ever step foot back in that building in any circumstance?
I've driven to the parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just have to have a reason to. I wouldn't say I wouldn't, as some kind of like.
But in a wide world, let's say you were invited to, there was some reason that you were given to.
I can't think of an invite I would get.
Oh, yeah.
But if
I'm just saying, in a weird world out there,
wild imaginative, example, then I would, weigh it carefully in prayer. Yeah. But I would likely, probably just decline. So it's one of those things that bygones be bygones, and that space and place. It's to me, it's sad because it will never be what it once was and what it could have been. And God forgive me for saying that. I hope them the best, the people that are still there. But there's just not a way that you
That's
can
the
go
sad
back.
part, yeah.
There's just not a way that you can go back to it because you can't undo the
Yeah.
past. So you can't erase the things that had happened in that building. So even if the future is,
Yeah.
incredible, it will always be on the foundation.
And I think that's so interesting. It's the what could have been.
Yeah.
Whenever you hear people talk about cults and those type of things, and how they started
Yeah.
versus how they ended.
It's
Again, a
always
big
a
one
big
I think
point.
of is Jim Jones of the
Yeah.
People's Temple. You hear those people, the couple that did survive, talk about the mourning process of what could have been.
Yeah.
The intention,
Yeah.
which for them was to build a community, a commune of all
Well,
these
and
believers and
I'm
people. And
pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly, but like he was a huge advocate for civil rights.
He was.
Before Martin Luther King even.
Yeah, he was the white minister of a predominantly black church.
Yeah, and that was one of those things that like he set the stage for what became that movement. So anyway, yeah, like, but that's a great example too. It's like, all right, these people, like, I mean, murdered people, right?
Yeah.
So like, even those people had, phenomenal beginnings where things really were pure and true. So I don't know. I think I just keep going back to the individual responsibility part of it. It's like, all right, please don't check your brains at the door.
Yeah.
And just make sure that you're listening to the Holy Spirit. He's inside of each of us. Like that should be the thing that we all, use as that personal conviction. And stay true to that.
Yeah. So I guess in closing, well, first, anything else you wanted to?
There's so many
share?
things, but maybe I'll come up.
We'll have many more of these talks. I have a feeling we're going to have many more of this for sure. We could do our own separate podcast just talking about this mess,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. But I guess, what do you want to say to those listening who have experienced this? I guess, let me do this. It's twofold. So number one, there's a lot of ex-Bridgeway people who are listening to this, who obviously know you and either knew you directly or knew your position inside of Bridgeway. They were from that era. So for those who are listening that were from the house and were from part of that, part of Bridgeway Church at some point, what do you want to say to them? Since you have this platform and opportunity, they never got to hear from you ever to begin with. They never got to hear your source. This is the first time you're finally giving them the answers that they wanted.
Later.
What would you say? What do you want to say to them? And then so start with that. And then second fold, what do you want to say to those who are listening, who are not a part of Bridgeway, but who also have these stories or may even feel like they're in the middle of one and this has kind of awakened them to what's going on in their own.
Yeah, I think I would say to all of them, and I mean these are things that I have said to a lot of the former Bridgeway folks I'm still friends with, but to like the collective, everyone that finds himself in that position, that it was the enemy's strategy to steal, kill, and destroy the gifts, callings, talents, abilities, passions that you've got that are God-given, that you have in your life, by hijacking them. And so I would just encourage you to not allow the enemy to have sullied all of those things and have stolen those things from you, because I think if you were designed to do that, and it could be you could be designed to be a stay-at-home dad or mom. It doesn't have to be a ministry position. Again, I'm trying to take away from the idea of what platform ministry even really is. That celebrity thing I think needs to have its own reckoning. But I would just encourage you to take an evaluation and assessment and almost like remembering of those things and those dreams that you'd had, and to not allow these folks to steal those things from you, because they were yours. Nobody could take them from you. Nobody should have been allowed to take them from you. And I really do believe that God safeguards those things. So, if you have a call of God in your life for a certain thing, and you feel like you've been burnt out, taken advantage of, used up, I would just say that that's not true. That God is your source and he's an infinite source. And so, you will always have the potential to have all of the impact, to see all the dreams and visions that you'd ever had accomplished. It was likely just that you were having those dreams and visions within the context of the place you called the local church. at the time. And so I would just encourage you to expand your mind and keep yourself open to the reality that, he's much bigger than a one instance, and don't let a human steal your God-given birthright. That would be my encouragement. And so just remember that, and then just remember the responsibility. I say responsibility, really it's the authority that you have to be able to correct folks like that. Don't be ashamed to speak out. Don't let people scare you from speaking out and sharing your truth, because that's testimony. That's not gossip. And I think that's something that you just think about, like in my position too. It's like you think about the people that you did harm from your inaction and from being complicit essentially by not speaking out. So just speak out. Don't be ashamed of that. You're not sinning. You're not, kicking against the goads and all these like gross misuses of these verses that were taken completely out of context. If you don't believe me, go and do deep dive studies of these scriptures that are being cherry picked to use to prevent correction to be able to happen. So yeah, that'd be my encouragement. So don't forsake your calls because somebody else has ruined them. They're yours and yours alone. And then also to make sure to hold each other accountable. And that means that nobody is above the other. There's only one head. It's Christ. That's it.
Yeah.
Amen.
I think that's great. And I know there's more to come. I have a feeling we'll have more of these conversations and have many more examples to come, but that is the bombshell.
I promise you guys, what is it? Who is it? Meghan Markle?
Meghan Markle. Yes.
This was my Meghan Markle. Everybody, just enjoyed it. I got a lot more to share.
It'll come in time. We'll definitely do it for sure. There's a lot more to come. No, I think it's great. I think for you guys out there, I think we definitely were able to cover everything that we wanted to cover and answer some of the crazy questions and bring clarity. So some things and
our getaway car.
And I hope so, because we'll pick back up in the fall, but for some of this is going to be our season finale. And so, my hope in me and Ashley, when we set out to do this, and my hope particularly in sharing the Bridgeway story and having you on, was to give voice to the voiceless. It was to bring clarity and voice to those who their stories have gone untold and remain untold. For those who felt alone and did not feel like anybody else understood their experience. For those who have not been in Bridgeway but are dealing with their own current experiences and don't know how to get out. The purpose was to expose the darkness behind it, to call it by its name, to call it what it is, to name the names that need to be named as cautionary tales and as examples of what to look out for. And ultimately to hopefully, particularly for those of you listening who were in Bridgeway, to bring you some kind of closure, to bring you some kind of voice and closure and healing by hearing us talk about it, by giving your story voices. I shared one of the messages with Leah Lindsay earlier, but I've gotten many of these messages of just people who've messaged me and gone, thank you so much for talking about it. And like one person in particular said, when I left, I also was called a Judas. And I didn't know that I didn't know that somebody else out there was too. And it's been really healing for me to hear somebody else say that they had the same experience I did. Which breaks my heart to hear that there's other people out there that have experienced that kind of mess. But also I read your messages, I respond to them, and it's the reason why we've done what we've done with this. And it's the reason why we'll continue to do what we do.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity.
That is Leave Artanian, everybody. And we will pick up in a future date. We'll let you know.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Ashley and I would like to take a moment and thank all of you, our listeners, who have tuned in week after week to give us the opportunity to tell our story and the stories of so many others who have faced so much religious trauma, but also has overcome so much in the process. We have told stories of breakthrough and triumph and healing in the midst of it all. And you have shared so many of your stories with us, and we are truly grateful to each and every one of you. We've had thousands and thousands of streams, and it has propelled us to move to the next stage of our podcast and continue to bring you the content that you deserve. There is still so much more to come, and we cannot wait to continue to deliver more to you in this next season. We will be taking a break, but we will announce some big stuff coming soon. Stay tuned, everybody. Bye.